Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. Now, in this video, we're going to expose the hypocrisy in the quote-unquote freedom of speech expression that the West wants to claim victorious over, when in fact we're seeing time and time again where they themselves breach their very own standards they promote. As you know, recently in the news, Blair Cottrell has hit the headlines. He's a right-wing activist that preaches in Australia against things like immigration, Islamization, and so forth. He's basically like another Pauline Hanson. Now, interestingly enough, he actually got an interview on Sky News recently. Now, a lot of controversy happened when he appeared on Sky News. They basically interviewed him, I think it was for about 10 minutes, but Sky News recently removed the actual interview from social media. As you can see on Blair Cottrell's Facebook page, where Blair Cottrell condemns the Sky News, he says this is hilarious. Sky News must be literally paying someone to watch my page and report every copy of this interview I upload. So firstly, Sky News takes this person, puts him on their show, interviews him, but is unhappy with the outcome of the interview and basically takes it off air due to the social norms and the pressures and so forth, because Blair Cottrell has some extremist views and so forth. By the way, folks, I have to interject this in. It's interesting that when you become an anti-Islamist and a person of anti-immigrant and so forth, you get a gig on the Sky News channel. This is the same channel that Andrew Bolt appears on, the Bolt Report and so forth, where he constantly speaks against Muslims and Islam. The same show where we had Sheikh Tawhidi appear on and given timeless, endless speeches speaking against Islam and Sunni Muslims. So how do you get to appear on Sky News? Just become an anti-Islamist and you'll get a gig right away. Just get a few thousand followers and you're on your way. So getting back on the ban of Blair Cottrell from Sky News, well, some of his extremist views were obviously the support of Hitler and, where he told that, you could hang Hitler's pictures in every schoolroom or bedroom of Australians and so forth. And he had other extremist views in the past. And apparently, he made other controversial statements. And by the way, this Blair Cottrell keeps going on about how his freedom of speech isn't tolerated and he's shut down and so forth. But these were the same individuals on the right that were accusing the ABC for allowing people like Yasmin Abdul-Majid to speak her opinion on the Australian broadcasting show. She was criticised for saying what she did. She was told, the ABC was condemned. She was told to stand down. And the poor lady had to leave Australia and go to the UK. So notice how when Yasmin Abdul-Majid says things to hurt the Australian society and those on the right, then suddenly freedom of speech should be suppressed. But when it comes to people like Blair Cottrell and people on the right, their freedom of speech, apparently according to Blair Cottrell, should be liberated, it should be allowed, it should be tolerated, and so forth. In fact, I wonder if I appeared on the Sky News and said something against the Anzacs. Maybe I said something discriminative, where I insulted the Anzacs of the past who died in World War I and so forth. If I denigrated them and said something nasty and I appeared on the Sky News show, would the right actually allow me to say what I say, or would they condemn Sky News for allowing me to give a platform for me? Would that be tolerated? I bet Blair Cottrell will be the first to condemn me for my speech and condemn Sky News for allowing me to appear there for speaking my mind. But then again, when they get condemned, when they get banned, it's a different story. Suddenly free speech becomes a tool to use, when in fact they like to oppress those on the left who actually speak their mind. However, when they get banned, it's a different story. Now freedom of speech apparently matters. So Sky News did give Blair Cottrell the freedom of speech to speak his mind, but of course Sky News, they basically took down the video, and like I said, according to the social norms and the pressures, they didn't want this to be on social media. So Blair Cottrell now goes against Sky News and attacks Sky News for silencing his video, for taking down his video from social media and banning Blair Cottrell, the very same guy they actually interviewed on the show. Now here is where it gets very interesting. There's a person called Andrew Bolt. He has his own show called The Bolt Report. He appears on the Sky News as well. This is the guy. This is his Facebook page. He's got 110,000 followers. As you see, he is connected to the Sky News. The Bolt Report. Now, this is the same man who appears on Sky News. He basically is there. He works for them. And this is the same guy who actually constantly, again, also attacks those on the left for censoring freedom of speech. Let's have a listen.
This issue.
There was to be defending our freedoms as Human Rights Commission. Freedom of speech is perhaps the most basic of human rights. Perhaps the most basic of human rights, apart from freedom of life, and it's silent.
Andrew, there was this issue.
There was to be defending our freedoms as Human Rights Commission. Freedom of speech is perhaps the most basic of human rights, apart from freedom of life, and it's silent.
Andrew,
now here again is Andrew Bolt shaking his head because freedom of speech is being silenced.
This law is an absolute disgrace to be coming from any government, but particularly in a democracy, but particularly a liberal so-called conservative government. If we believe in freedom of speech, Andrew, we believe in freedom of speech and the principle of freedom of speech at all times, even in difficult times, and probably at most in difficult times. Freedom of speech is easy when times aren't difficult. So the first thing, the government have come in and brought in a law and said, we're going to put kind of 18C type laws in to make you, the public, behave during this occasion. So clearly, the Liberal Party no longer believe in free speech. No longer believe in it. One of the key values of the Liberal Party has been ditched because they are saying that they don't trust the people of Australia to conduct a pretty straightforward debate without the government putting the heavy hand of censorship upon them.
So there you have it. See, notice how Andrew Bolt shakes his head when he hears that freedom of speech is being discriminated against, how it's being silenced. Yet the same guy works for Sky News, the very same news that censored Blair Cottrell's interview and removed it from social media just because some people will be offended of Blair Cottrell's comments. Here is Andrew Bolt once again interviewing Gerard Henderson about them both on their show criticising the left for, censoring freedom of speech. Let's listen.
What's happened is that the left has become increasingly intolerant and doesn't want debate, it wants to close down debate. Now, if you go back some decades, the left was always arguing for free speech, but now large sections of the left want to close down any kind of opposition to their views, and there's virtually no one in the community who will stand up against it. because large sections of these groups that you would expect to stand up for free speech are cowed and won't do it. So if you do stand up for free speech, it's a very lonely position. It's a very unfashionable position. I suspect it's supported by a majority of Australians, but in terms of those who are active in the public debate, there are very few people who will stand up on this because they fear for their careers, and they don't really want all the abuse they cop if you do stand up. So I thought the cancellation of Ms Ali's visit was a tragedy, because of what it really means is now you can't have some.
So notice how he says, yep, Andrew Bolt agrees that people don't stick up to freedom of speech because they're afraid of losing their job. Well, let's see if Andrew Bolt is a true person, or is he a hypocrite, or is he the same people who are afraid to actually lose their job. Well, let's see if Mr. Andrew Bolt has actually condemned his own very Sky News for silencing Blair Cottrell and removing the discussion. Let's go to the Andrew Bolt report. We'll see if he's posted a single thing where he has condemned his own very same Sky News, the same show he appears to attack those on the left for censoring freedom of speech. Does he then attack the right, the very same Sky News that he defends? Does he also attack them where he has a platform with them, he works for them? Does he attack that very same Sky News for censoring Blair Cottrell and removing it? Well, I went through his whole entire Facebook. I went all the way down, and as you can see, he has not published a single video. And I mean, anyone can prove me wrong. Just put it in the comment section below. Show me where Andrew Bolt has condemned his own very Sky News for removing the the Blair Cottrell interview. And you can see nothing. It's absolutely, there's nothing there. You can go all the way below, I mean, to the 2nd of August, 1st of August, you'll see there is absolutely no, and you can go back as far as the 8th, you could go as far as the 1st of August, you can go back as far as the 30th of July, and there's absolutely no statement from the Bolt report where he actually condemns the very same Sky News for silencing Blair Cottrell and removing his discussion. So notice the hypocrisy. We saw the hypocrisy through Blair Cottrell, where he would obviously attack Sky News if Sky News had someone on the left appearing and criticising the Anzacs or speaking against Australian values. Of course, you'll have people like the Bolt report, Andrew Bolt, who works for the Sky News, who again also criticises those on the left for silencing free speech. But then he says absolutely nothing to his own very Sky News, who actually silences Blair Cottrell for his provocative statements. And in that very interview that I posted, the man said to him, people are afraid to lose their jobs. Well, I thought Mr. Bolt, according to those who support Bolt, I thought Mr. Andrew Bolt was a man of his word. He's not afraid to express his opinion. He's not afraid of the media and so forth. Yet he's afraid of his own very media for losing his job, because that's what will eventually happen. It will consequently cost his job. And that's why he remains silent to actually even make such a statement against the Sky News, because obviously he works for him. So this is hypocrisy at its very best.